Hello, people of YouTube. Welcome to a hot and humid day in Kentucky. It is in the upper 80s, I believe, and the humidity is off the charts. It's been raining like crazy here in central Kentucky for the past, I don't know, I'd say a week or two. We had an absolute downpour a couple days ago, thunderstorms, so it's been really wet, which is kind of difficult for the bees to get out and forage during the storms, but afterwards it just opens everything back up. And right now in particular, it seems like the bees have been hitting the white clover quite a bit. I've got a lot of clover all over my property and I can just see the bees all over it. So lots of activity out at the hives today. I need to get in there and check their honey supers and just see if we're still in a flow, how much they're filling them up. Do I need to add another super? If you've watched my channel, I've already done one round of extractions. So I did that, I believe, at the beginning of June. So it's been about maybe 3 weeks or so. Got quite a bit of honey off those poles. Very, very pleased. I'm estimating somewhere around 300 pounds or so off technically about 8 hives, because that's what I successfully pulled out of the winter. I'm up to 15 hives in the apiary right now, so lots more to go. So next year's honey crop could be even a lot more. So, however, need to get in and check these hives. I just have either the single supers and the double supers, which were bigger hives with more bees. I went ahead and put a second super on, or if you watch my other video, some of these lower supers on the ones that have 2 supers on those hives, there was a little bit of brood still left in those supers that hadn't emerged yet from where I initially let the queen lay in the supers, which I don't think I'm going to do next year. And then that brood had not completely emerged yet to where I moved the queen back below the queen excluder and would allow the bees to backfill that super with honey, which in all likelihood is what they've been doing the past 3 weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and get in these hives now and just check real quick. I'm not really going to do inspections. I don't need to try to find the queen or necessarily look for brood or signs of life. I'm 90+% sure every single one of these hives is queen right and doing well. I marked 14 queens red this year, which are brand new queens. Pretty excited about that, having fresh queens in all the hives. But I need to get in here and check the super levels. And if we have still been experiencing a heck of a flow here in Kentucky, this is almost like spring weather. It is hot, but it's been wet. And so this summer has been kind of unusual so far. The temperatures haven't been in the blistering 90s or so yet. And we've gotten plenty of rain, which means plenty of time for the bees to continue foraging. So I'm going to go ahead and get in here and see where we're at and make an assessment, and I'll bring you guys along for the ride. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at what we have here. As you can see, there's quite a bit of activity today. There was a lot, even more out here earlier. This is the time of the year that our bees can get pretty grumpy too. Whenever they start sensing the end of the flow, or we're about out of spring and we're technically in summer, even though this has been spring-like conditions, and all those foragers don't have as much to do and they tend to just camp out at the hive. There's not enough, not as much food or natural resources that are available to them. They tend to get a little grumpy and they get a lot more protective and defensive over their honey, rightfully so. But on a day like today, I don't think they'll be too angry. I'm just curious on some of these supers. I haven't been in some of these hives in almost 3 weeks to a month, and gosh, you can tell it's hard to just pry this off. There we go. And I'm just curious how full they've gotten some of these, and if I need to add another super. I've got 7 or 8 empty supers back in the shop from the first pull, the first extraction, that I set outside, and the bees cleaned it up beautifully. So it's all drawn wax, but nice and picked clean by the bees. Now the comb's all destroyed because whenever you set those supers out and it's got wet honey all over it and it's not the bees' native hive, the foragers don't care whether they destroy the wax or the comb, nothing. They're just ripping apart and foraging. And so it's just always kind of funny to see how they just kind of decimate the comb. But it's not a big deal. You put it back on a hive, and a healthy hive will take that, propolising that a little bit, will take that comb and repair it in no time flat. So just looking down in here, you can see there's a lot of bees on the inner cover. My queen should not be up in here because I have queen excluder on all this. This was, go ahead and shake these bees off. I'm pretty sure on this colony, this was a empty frame, or I'm sorry, an empty super that I set back on here just 3 weeks ago. And I'm looking down here and I can see maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames. So I'm just gonna pull a couple here and take a look and see if they've backfilled it, and then how much they've backfilled. Yeah, so there's nectar all through here, and right here a little bit of capped honey, but this is all wet and open. And looking down in here, I see it's the same on the other. So this colony is doing great, but they do not need another super. This one is fine. They've got 1, 2, 3, or 2 frames undrawn. Everything over here is drawn, and so they've got plenty of room to continue. Well, they really propolis that, and I know why. Ants are bothering this hive. So what the bees do is they put this sticky residue around the edge of the inner covers, and they really try to seal the hive up. And this stuff is called propolis right here, and it comes from tree pulp and some other things, but it is extremely sticky, and the ants cannot get through the crack here. They would get stuck in that. So the bees know what they're doing. They seal up the hive, they keep all the pesky ants out, and that propolis actually is really good stuff. It's got, from what I understand, what I've read, some healing properties to it. I know some beekeepers that will chew on propolis. I personally do not. Not that I'm opposed to it. I don't know. I just haven't tried chewing on it. But I believe it's what's the word? Antimicrobial. It's got properties that prevents, bacteria or other sort of, what do you want to call it, microbes from growing. So that's my understanding. I haven't done a whole lot of research on propolis. I just know the bees use it to really sort of seal up their hive from any sort of critters that want to come in and get their honey, right? Which ants is, public enemy number 1 in terms of that. But that's it. That's all I need to look at. So this, took me a total of about 2 minutes. I don't need to inspect this hive. All the signs look good. Last time I checked it, it was queen right. And so I just keep moving on, moving down the line. This hive about an hour ago was exploding with activity on the front. I don't know what they're after or what they're getting, but they're bringing in something for sure. So I'm curious what this super looks like. And we got lots of ants still. Just annoying. I'm sure it annoys them too. Ants have been a problem for me this year on these hives that tend to get a little bit more shade. I don't know if that's why, but in the years past, I haven't really had many ant issues. It seems like it's give and take because I've seen no wax moths and almost 0 small hive beetles. And normally I get a small hive beetle here and there. I've never had a hive that was absolutely slimed or overrun with small hive beetles. I know plenty of folks that have, but it's like, you know, it's always something. The bees are hiding out inside the inner cover, so this is going to be pretty well propolised, I bet. Yep. Oh wow. Go ahead and shake the bees off here. All right. A little bit of brace comb here on the inner cover, nothing significant here. I just like to clean it up if I can, set it aside. But this this colony has already backfilled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 frames. I'm gonna bring you in so you can see what I'm looking at. I'm always amazed when, you know, you take a lot of the bees' honey. Of course, they have plenty down in the deep still where they feed their young and everything. What's up here in the super generally is excess. But this super was completely empty, and now you can see when you're looking down in here, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this side 7 frames where I can tell just by looking at it, it's got capped honey in there. And so this colony, I am tempted to put another super back on. Now they technically haven't drawn this frame out yet. Looks like they're working on drawing this. I can just tell that there's comb here, not here on the edge, but there's comb in the middle that they started to draw. And bees will always prefer to draw up and in the middle rather than going out. But if you give them no other option, they will draw out all the way here if they start running out of space. So this is great. I'm gonna pull I swear that happens all the time with Siri. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull a couple of these frames and just take a look and see how much capped honey is on them. I need to start taking my Apple Watch off before I make these videos so Siri doesn't feel the need to chime in constantly. This is pretty fat comb too, because I decided to only use the 9 frames instead of 10, which I really liked. It was so much easier to extract. Let's take a look at this. Oh yeah, I mean, that's about 70%, 80% capped, and it's all full of honey. So this is all capped honey here, and then there's nectar all in there, and the other side not quite as much, but it's all nectar in here. So they're working on capping this all through here, and this is all fresh cap. And looking down in here, I mean, there's honey all over this. So I'm thinking this hive may get another super. I honestly don't know how much longer the flow is going to last around here, but might as well take advantage of it. And especially if I have some frames that aren't drawn, maybe they'll start to draw them. It really gets unlikely the farther you get into spring and into summer. As you're approaching the dearth, bees are just not going to want to draw comb. The best time of year for that is the early spring, right when they come out of the winter. They're in wax producing mode. They're like wax drawing machines. It's really hard to get bees to draw comb whenever the natural source of nectar outside tends to drop down. As long as there's fresh nectar out there, they will draw comb. It's essentially what triggers the hive to say, okay, we've got food available, we need to draw more comb to be able to store it. Once that natural food source starts really dying down, the comb production really dies down. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab another super from the shop and throw it on top of this hive. All right, let's go ahead and get this other super on. Now, to encourage the bees to start to store in here, or, you know, God forbid, even start to draw some more wax in here, I'm going to switch the location of the 2 supers. So here's some of the wax that they picked apart and cleaned. You'll be able to see how they've really kind of torn it up, because the bees that were getting this, it wasn't their home, wasn't their wax. So they were just pretty sloppy in how they ripped open any remaining comb and got all that residual honey out, and that's fine. The bees will clean this up and put it right back to pristine condition. Pretty amazing little creatures, honestly. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 frames in here. And I'm just gonna set, there's already some bees on it. Set this on the end here. It's gonna be a little tricky getting this one off, because the queen excluder will be stuck to it a little bit, but you just keep your hive tool pressed down. Man, that's heavy. I mean, that's 25, maybe 30 pounds of honey in there. I'd say maybe 30. Whew, awesome. From a hive that already probably gave me 50 plus more pounds of honey from the first extraction. And just looking down in here, I've got 9 seams of bees here, so a pretty good sized colony. So that leads me to, I guess, my next point. So when I do come back at the end of, towards the end of summer here, and do that final honey pull, what I'm gonna do is hives that I assess that look pretty large, like this one, where I'm gonna have to shove one, definitely one, but maybe 2 supers. If the queen's still in there laying at this time of year, which she probably is, if I have to, it's a little spacer, staring right at it. If I have to shove 2 supers worth of bees down into a brood area that's already full of bees, that's gonna create somewhat of a spacing issue. Because if you've been watching my channel, you know that I only run single brood management. I don't use double or triple deeps anywhere in my colonies, unless it's for a temporary situation like a laying worker hive, or I've got a hive that's weak or queenless and I need to combine it with a queen right colony, and I'll do a slow introduction. I may have 2 deeps for a couple days, and then once that assimilation or introduction occurs, I'm shaking the bees in the upper deep down into the lower deep and removing that, throwing a queen excluder on if I'm gonna put supers on, or just putting the top on and calling it good. I made a video, if you look back in the history of my videos, on the pros and cons of single brood management. Be sure to check that out. I'll try to link it at the end of this video for those of you that want to watch it. There's lots of pros and cons to single brood management. It's just personal preference, like almost anything with beekeeping. I believe the pros far outweigh the cons. One of the biggest cons being a lot of swarming in the beginning of the spring, but a lot of my beekeeping friends that run doubles were dealing with just as much swarming issues as I was. So anyway, back to the plan. Rather than shoving a ton of bees down into a single deep where they're packed and stuffed and don't have room, I'll make an assessment, and if I see 9, 10 frames of bees in a single and I've got tons of bees in the supers, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do an ad hoc split. So as I'm pulling the honey off for that final extraction, final removal, these bees are roaring. That's called the queenless roar. A lot of beekeepers will, if they're doing a split, all you do is separate the 2 boxes and wait about 10 minutes, and whichever one starts roaring, that's the one that doesn't have your queen in it. That's the quick and dirty, non-evasive, I'm not sure if I can find my queen method. It's a beekeeper's trick that you just separate the 2, and whichever one starts roaring, that's the one that's queenless. This super right now is roaring a little bit because they've lost the scent of their queen's pheromone. So while I'm talking, I'm gonna go ahead and get this super back on the colony here, because they're looking a little lost here, like, wait a minute, where did our queen go? So the reason, I'm all over the place right now, so bear with me, I've got multiple thoughts I'm trying to finish, but the reason that I alternated these supers is that with them having the honey up here now, they are now going to associate this middle space as part of their hive. Whereas before, if I just put an empty super on top, that dead space up above them, they may just completely ignore it. So this is another little trick that we do as beekeepers to try to encourage our bees to draw comb or fill it up with more honey versus what they already have and going out. So I'm hoping within the next month or two I'll see some activity in here as far as storing the honey and whatnot. So anyway, back to my other thought. So I'll be doing ad hoc splits, and that really helps provide the bees with more room. And so, goodness gracious, what do they say, smoke follows beauty? So what I'm gonna end up doing then is I'll have some nukes, and hopefully, the Lord willing, I will have some nukes available for sale next year. Because that's one thing I have not sold yet is nukes. I've still been expanding my apiary, so I've been keeping all mine. However, I may try to overwinter nukes. If I make a nuke from a split, obviously you can do it one of two ways. You can keep the queen in here, or you can move her to the nuke. I'm going to keep all my queens in their original hive. They're brand new queens. They're 2023 mated queens. I don't really see a reason to risk putting them in a nuke and then this hive not successfully requeening. I'd rather have the nuke be the mystery on whether it's going to be able to successfully requeen or not. If it requeens, great. I'm gonna try to overwinter that nuke the way it is. If they don't requeen, I'll assess after several weeks, and all I'll do is I'll just shake the bees out or I'll combine them with another hive. You can use the newspaper method. Lots of ways to combine a queenless hive with a queen right colony. So this hive looks great. So we're going ahead and button this one back up, other than the stupid ants. But I see some messages on Facebook and stuff like, how do you deal with all the ants? Honestly, you don't have to. That's the reality. The bees have been coexisting with ants for thousands, tens of thousands of years, okay? So they know how to take care of the ants. It's more of a nuisance for us as beekeepers, it's just, you've got ants running all over the place. It looks unsightly, but the bees, as long as they can get to whatever space is necessary where the ants are coming in, it's not gonna be an issue. It's only an issue if there's some sort of space that the bees cannot get to that the ants are getting in. I've tried using some diatomaceous earth, it looks like with varying success, but with all the friggin' thunderstorms that we've had, I'm sure it washed a lot of that, and I can see it's almost all gone around the base here. So I'm just gonna have to reapply some of that diatomaceous earth, because I really do think it helps if you can cover the legs of the hive stand here. So that's good. So let's move on to our next one. Some of the comments I've been getting that I wanted to address on the hive entrances. So I've been seeing a couple comments, goodness, Josh, open up those hive entrances. The bees are hot. They're not getting in and out very easily, or etc. Something along those lines. I run all screen bottom boards. So every hive that you see here, including the Apimay pollen traps, have an open bottom board, screen bottom board, and all the IPM boards are out, meaning I'm not using the IPM boards currently. So because of that, there's plenty of airflow through this hive. I've not seen any bearding on any of my hives this year, last year. It just doesn't happen. I get the morning sun here. The sun comes up behind you on camera, right out of comes up out of the east, rises up over our head here. I've got trees obviously behind me. So when you get to about noon to 1 o'clock, these hives start getting shade. So in the blistering 4 p.m., 5 p.m. summer heat, the sun is not beating down on these hives. And because of that, they're not getting super hot. And then I also have not just the bottom entrances, but I have these super entrances, which also allow another area for the bees to fan and for them to circulate airflow into the hive. So conversely, this hive is not storing hardly anything. There's 2, maybe 3 frames of honey. lots of undrawn here. So they 100% do not need anything else. So they are good. Just trying to get this colony. I may cherry pick some frames during that last extraction, but focus on this colony is going to be just getting them ready for the winter. So we'll go ahead and put this colony back together here. It's always funny the difference in colonies sitting right next to each other, how one can be far more prolific than another one. It just, there's all sorts of variables. I'm not going to pretend to know everything that goes into it. Genetics, maybe, location, I don't know. Different types of honeybees, whether that be Italians, Caucasians, Russians. Here in Oldham County, we have a lot of mutts. So they're just a combination of several different kinds. But they do very well here. All right. Let's see what this one looks like. This is the time of year when it starts getting hot. This is the unfun part of beekeeping. It gets miserable out here in your bee suit, especially when the sun's out. Oh my Lord. Okay, we got a lot of bees up in the inner cover. That's usually a sign that they're all up in this super. So we're gonna find out here. But I mean, I got bees all over this. Let me see if I can move the camera and bring you guys a little closer. Get a better shot. All right, let's try this. Sorry, I'm kind of a one-man crew here. Need to try to convince my wife to come out here and help me in the bee yard like Cayman Reynolds does, having his wife record all of his videos. My wife currently wants nothing to do with bees for the most part. She likes them, but she likes them from a distance. All right, let's take a look at this, see what we got in here. Goodness gracious. Yeah, see, this colony definitely needs another super. So look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I could just tell how many were in there. So we've got two colonies that didn't need it and 2 colonies that do. So colony 2 and colony 4 are socking it away, which is great. Take a look at this. That's dark. Now, the middle part here is still open, but you've got honey, and I'll show you this other frame here. It's got a little more in it. We've got, they're putting nectar down in there. Lots of bees in this colony though, look at that. So capped honey all here. And then nectar that they're still curing and capping right here. So almost another full frame though. Just awesome, awesome stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab another super in the shop, bring it out here, and give these girls some more storage area. I'll do the same thing where I swap the location and put this one up on top and put the other one down in the middle. Here's some propolis I was talking about. It's real sticky stuff. It has the consistency of almost like a, guys remember that Laffy Taffy? It's like taffy type candy food. So So yeah, that's about it. So I'll finish this up and then I'll go through the rest of the hives and kind of assess the honey situation. But there's really no need to get down in these deeps and do inspections when all signs that the colony is doing well, things are looking good. It'll be time to treat for mites pretty soon. So as soon as I pull these supers off the hive, it's going to be ready, set, go, and we are going to treat like crazy. I use Apigard, which is a thiamol-based treatment for mites. These colonies have not been treated since early spring, so February, March time frame. So the mite loads, I guarantee you, excuse me, have been going up and up and up. And we're going to want to knock those mites down as much as possible because the beekeeping calendar starts in August, which is upon us. We got about a month here. It's July 3rd, July 4th is tomorrow. Happy 4th of July to everyone out there. But you've got to get the mite loads down going into winter because the queen's going to start making all those fat bees that have to survive throughout the winter. And those bees need to be very healthy. And the way that you make sure is with good nutrition and dead mites. So we're going to be feeding syrup when I pull this honey, and we're going to be treating for mites first. I'm not going to feed while I treat. You can, but the way that Apigard works is you want the bees to focus on carrying that out of the hive, not necessarily worried about carrying sugar and storing it. So anyway, I'll do a whole video on that Apigard later and take you through the pros and cons of that and why I use it and when. But just wanted to quickly assess these hives for the honey situation to make sure they weren't getting honey bound and got plenty of room here. I swear every time I come out here, there's somebody mowing their yard at some point. I have a knack for it. So anyway, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I'll see y'all in the next one.